Hi there. My name is Miguel, and I'm 25 years old. I come from Mexico City, but I recently spent a month in New York City to improve my English. I work as a software developer for a small tech company in Mexico. In my free time, I enjoy playing soccer, listening to music, and trying new foods. I'm usually a shy person, especially when speaking English, but my experience in New York changed that in many ways. Today, I want to tell you about one special day during my trip that taught me a lot about American English and helped me feel more confident speaking with native speakers. It all started on a sunny Tuesday morning in May. I had been in New York for about 2 weeks already, living in a small apartment I rented in Brooklyn. I was taking English classes in the mornings, but my afternoons were free to explore the city. On this particular day, I woke up early and decided to challenge myself. I would try to have at least 5 real conversations with New Yorkers. This was a big deal for me because even though I had studied English for years in Mexico, I always felt nervous speaking with native speakers. I worried about my accent, making grammar mistakes, or not understanding what people said to me. But I knew that the only way to really improve was to practice, so I made this challenge for myself. After eating a quick breakfast in my apartment, I got dressed and checked my backpack to make sure I had everything I needed for the day. My subway card, some money, my phone, and a small notebook where I could write down new words or phrases I might learn. I also had a map of New York City, though I mostly used the map app on my phone to find my way around. I left my apartment around 8:30 in the morning and walked to the nearest subway station. The subway in New York is huge compared to the metro in Mexico City. There are so many different lines going in all directions, and the stations are often crowded with people rushing to work. At first, the subway system confused me, but after 2 weeks, I was starting to understand it better. I bought a coffee from a small cart near the subway entrance. This would be my first conversation of the day. "Good morning," I said to the man running the coffee cart. He was an older man with gray hair and a friendly smile. "Could I get a medium coffee with milk, please?" The man nodded. "Sure thing, buddy. That'll be $2.50. As he prepared my coffee, he asked, "Where you from?" I hear an accent. I told him I was from Mexico City, and he told me his parents had come to New York from Greece many years ago. "Everyone's from somewhere else in this city," he said with a laugh as he handed me my coffee. "Enjoy your day, amigo." I smiled at his use of the Spanish word. "Thank you. You too," I replied, feeling good about my first conversation. It was simple, but I had understood everything, and he had understood me too. With my coffee in hand, I headed down into the subway station. I decided to go to Central Park first, since the weather was so nice. I checked the subway map and found the train I needed. While I was waiting on the platform, I noticed a woman looking confused at the subway map on the wall. She had a suitcase with her and looked like she might be a tourist too. I thought this could be my second conversation opportunity, so I took a deep breath and approached her. "Excuse me?" I said. "Do you need help finding your way?" The woman looked relieved. "Oh yes, thank you," she replied. "I'm trying to get to Times Square, but I'm not sure which train to take." Her accent sounded European, maybe German or Dutch, I thought. I felt a sense of pride that I, also a foreigner, could help someone else navigate New York. "You need to take the Q train to 42nd Street Times Square," I explained, pointing to the map. "It should be here in about 5 minutes according to the sign." The woman thanked me and introduced herself as Anna from Switzerland. We chatted while waiting for our trains, which were going in different directions. She told me she was visiting New York for a week, and I shared that I was there to improve my English. "Your English is very good," she said kindly. "I wouldn't have guessed it's not your first language." Her comment made me feel more confident. Maybe my English wasn't as bad as I thought. My train arrived first, and I said goodbye to Anna before boarding. The subway car was crowded with morning commuters, people reading books or looking at their phones, most of them wearing headphones and lost in their own worlds. I found a spot to stand, holding onto a pole as the train moved quickly through the dark tunnel. 3 stops later, I got off at the station near Central Park. As I climbed the stairs out of the subway, the noise and energy of the city hit me all at once. Car horns honking, people talking loudly on their phones, street vendors calling out to passers-by. New York is never quiet. I walked towards Central Park, finishing my coffee along the way. The park was a beautiful contrast to the busy streets around it. There were tall trees, green grass, and paths winding through the landscape. Even though the park was in the middle of a huge city, it felt peaceful. I found an empty bench near a small lake and sat down to watch people rowing boats on the water. Next to my bench was an older man feeding breadcrumbs to some birds. He wore a bright blue hat and had a cane leaning against the bench beside him. He smiled at me, and I decided this could be my third conversation of the day. "Good morning," I said. "It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" The man nodded enthusiastically. "Sure is, son. Perfect day to be in the park." His voice was deep and had a different sound from the other American accents I had heard. I learned later this was called a Southern accent. We started talking, and I found out his name was Walter, and he had lived in New York for 40 years, but grew up in Georgia. "What brings you to the Big Apple?" he asked me. I wasn't familiar with this expression. "The Big Apple?" I repeated, confused. Walter chuckled. "That's just a nickname for New York City," he explained. I smiled, making a mental note of this new expression. I told Walter about my trip and my challenge to have conversations with locals. "Well, you're doing just fine talking to me," he said encouragingly. "But let me teach you a few New York phrases to help you out." For the next 20 minutes, Walter taught me expressions like, "I'm beat," meaning very tired. "It's a schlep," meaning a long or difficult journey. And "What's the damage?" asking how much something costs. I wrote them all down in my notebook. Before I left, Walter pointed me toward a good place to get lunch later. "There's a great pizza joint just outside the park on 77th Street, he said. "Tell Tony that Walter sent you. He might give you a discount." I thanked Walter for his kindness and continued my walk through the park. Central Park is huge, and I spent almost 2 hours walking around, seeing different parts like Strawberry Fields, a memorial for John Lennon, and Bethesda Fountain. By then, it was around noon, and I was getting hungry. I decided to find the pizza place Walter had recommended. Following his directions, I left the park and walked a few blocks until I found a small restaurant with a sign that said, "Tony's Famous Pizza." The restaurant was narrow, but went far back from the street, with about 10 small tables and a counter where you could order. The walls were covered with photos of famous people who had eaten there, and the smell of fresh pizza filled the air. I went to the counter where a man with a thick black mustache was taking orders. "Hi there, what can I get you?" he asked quickly. I remembered what Walter had told me. "Hello, Walter from the park suggested I come here," I said. He speaks very highly of your pizza." The man's serious expression immediately changed to a wide smile. "You know Walter? That old guy is one of my best customers. Any friend of Walter's is a friend of mine. I'm Tony." He reached across the counter to shake my hand. "First time at Tony's?" I nodded. "Then you gotta try a slice of the classic cheese. It's what made us famous." I ordered a slice of cheese pizza and a soda, and Tony gave me a discount, just as Walter had predicted. While I waited for my pizza, Tony asked me questions about Mexico and told me about his family, who came to New York from Italy 3 generations ago. "My grandfather started this place in 1951, he said proudly, pointing to an old black and white photo on the wall. "The recipe hasn't changed since then." When my pizza arrived, it was huge, much bigger than the slices we have in Mexico City. Tony showed me the New York way to eat it. Fold the slice in half lengthwise to make it easier to hold. The pizza was delicious, with the perfect balance of tangy sauce, melted cheese, and a thin, crispy crust. As I ate, I watched Tony interact with other customers. He knew many of them by name and asked about their families or jobs. This seemed typical of New York. Despite being such a big city, there were these small communities within it, like Tony's pizza shop, where regulars were treated like family. After lunch, I decided to visit the Metropolitan Museum of Art, which everyone called the Met. I had read that it was one of the best museums in the world. I took the subway again, feeling more confident navigating the system now. The museum was enormous, with an impressive entrance featuring tall columns and wide steps where many people sat enjoying the sunshine. Inside, I bought a ticket and got a map of the museum. There was no way I could see everything in one visit. The museum had thousands of artworks from around the world and throughout history. I decided to focus on the American painting section since I was there to learn about American culture. As I was looking at a painting by an artist named Edward Hopper, I noticed a museum guide giving a free tour to a small group. I joined them, thinking this would be a good way to learn more about the art and possibly have another conversation with someone. The guide, a woman named Rachel with short red hair and glasses, was explaining how Hopper's paintings often showed people alone in city settings, capturing a feeling of isolation that can exist even in crowded places like New York. After the tour ended, I approached Rachel to ask a question about another painting I had seen. "Excuse me, I was wondering if you could tell me more about the painting with the farmer and his wife. The one with the pitchfork?" Rachel smiled. "Oh, you're talking about American Gothic by Grant Wood. Actually, that painting isn't here. It's in the Art Institute of Chicago, but it's a common mistake because it's such a famous American painting." I felt embarrassed about my error, but Rachel was very nice about it. "Where are you from?" she asked. When I told her Mexico City, she got excited and told me she had visited there last year and loved it. "The Frida Kahlo Museum was amazing," she said. "I studied art history in college, and Frida is one of my favorite artists." We ended up talking about Mexican art for almost 15 minutes. Rachel recommended some other sections of the museum I might enjoy and gave me a special exhibition brochure that wasn't available at the main entrance. "Come back tomorrow if you can," she suggested. "I'm giving a tour of the Latin American art section, and I think you'd enjoy it." I thanked her and promised to try to return. I spent another 2 hours exploring the museum, seeing art from ancient Egypt, Greece, and Rome, as well as more modern works. By the time I left, it was around 5:30 in the evening. I was getting tired from all the walking, but I still wanted to see Times Square at night, when all the lights and billboards would be shining. I took the subway to 42nd Street and followed the crowds toward the famous intersection. Even before I reached Times Square, I could see the glow of the massive digital billboards lighting up the evening sky. When I finally stepped into the square, I was amazed by the sensory overload. Enormous screens displaying colorful advertisements, the sounds of traffic and street performers, and thousands of people taking photos and staring up at the spectacle. I found a spot on the red steps in the center of the square and sat down to take it all in. Next to me was a family looking at a map, speaking a mix of English and what sounded like Portuguese. They seemed to be having trouble deciding what to do next. "Hi there," I said to them. "Do you need any recommendations?" The father looked up, relieved. "Yes, please. We're trying to find a good place for dinner that won't be too expensive. Something typical American that the kids would enjoy too." I thought for a moment. I had only been in New York for 2 weeks, but I had already found some good places to eat. "There's a great burger place about 2 blocks from here," I suggested. "It's called Shake Shack, and it's famous in New York. The lines can be long, but the food is really good and not too expensive." The family thanked me, and the mother asked where I was from. We talked for a few minutes, and I learned they were visiting from Brazil. Their 2 children, around 10 and 12 years old, practiced their English with me, proudly telling me about the sights they had seen in New York. Before they left for dinner, the father took a family photo with me, saying, "Now we'll remember the helpful Mexican we met in New York." I was happy to have helped them, just as others had helped me during my time in the city. After the Brazilian family left, I decided to get dinner myself. I was craving something different from the pizza I had for lunch, so I walked a few blocks away from the tourist center to find something more local. I discovered a small deli that looked popular with office workers getting food to take home. Inside, there was a long counter with various salads, sandwiches, and hot foods. I wasn't sure how the ordering system worked, so I watched other customers for a minute before getting in line. When it was my turn, a busy-looking woman behind the counter asked, "What'll it be?" I hesitated, still looking at all the options. "I'm not sure. What do you recommend?" The woman's impatient expression softened a bit. "First time here, huh? If you want something New York, get the pastrami on rye. Can't go wrong with that." I nodded. "That sounds good. Yes, I'll have that, please." As she prepared my sandwich, she asked, "You visiting?" I told her about my month-long stay to improve my English. She seemed impressed. "That's smart. Best way to learn is to jump right in. How's it going so far?" I told her about my challenge to have conversations with locals today, and she laughed. "Well, I'm conversation number. What number am I?" I counted in my head. "You're my 6th conversation today," I said proudly. "Congratulations, kid. You're doing great. Your English is better than my Spanish, and I've lived next to a Puerto Rican family for 20 years. She handed me my sandwich, which was wrapped in paper and much heavier than I expected. "Extra pastrami," she said with a wink, "for being brave enough to talk to strangers in New York." I thanked her and found a small table in the corner of the deli to eat my sandwich. The pastrami was delicious, warm, thinly sliced meat with mustard on fresh rye bread. It was different from any sandwich I'd had in Mexico, and I understood why it was a New York classic. As I ate, I thought about all the conversations I'd had today and felt proud of myself. My challenge had been a success, and I had not only practiced my English, but also learned about New York from the people who knew it best. After dinner, I was tired, but decided to walk for a while before heading back to my apartment in Brooklyn. The city was still buzzing with energy as the evening went on. I walked down Broadway, past theaters where famous shows were playing. I couldn't afford a ticket to a Broadway show, but just seeing the marquees with their bright lights was exciting. As I was taking a photo of one theater, a young man about my age approached me. "Hey, do you want me to take a photo of you in front of the theater?" he offered. I hesitated at first. In Mexico City, you have to be careful about handing your phone to strangers. But something about his friendly face made me trust him. "Yes, thank you," I said, giving him my phone. He took a few photos of me and then returned my phone. His name was Dave, and he worked as a stagehand in one of the Broadway theaters. When he heard I was interested in the shows but couldn't afford a ticket, he gave me a tip. If you download the Today Tix app, they sometimes have rush tickets for really cheap on the day of the show. You might get lucky. We ended up walking together for a few blocks, and Dave told me about his dream of becoming a theater director. I told him about my job as a software developer in Mexico, and how I was hoping my improved English would help me get a better position when I returned home. "You should look into tech jobs in theater," Dave suggested. "There's a lot of cool software being used for lighting, sound, and special effects now. Might be a way to combine your skills with something you enjoy." I hadn't thought about that possibility before, and it was interesting to consider. We exchanged Instagram accounts before saying goodbye, and Dave told me to message him if I wanted more local recommendations during my stay. "Talking to you was my 7th conversation in English today," I told him proudly before we parted ways. "Keep it up, man," he said with a thumbs up. "Your English sounds great to me." It was getting late, so I headed toward the subway to go back to Brooklyn. The train was less crowded now, and I found a seat easily. As the subway rumbled through the tunnels under the city, I thought about everything I had experienced that day. I had spoken with 7 different people: the coffee vendor, Anna from Switzerland, Walter in the park, Tony at the pizza place, Rachel at the museum, the Brazilian family, the deli worker, and Dave from the theater. Each conversation had gotten easier than the one before it. I realized that most people were patient and kind when they could tell I was trying my best to communicate in their language. And each person had shared something valuable with me. Whether it was a new English expression, a recommendation, or just a friendly moment that made me feel less like a stranger in a big city. I had started the day feeling nervous about talking to people, but I was ending it feeling confident and connected. When I got back to my apartment in Brooklyn, I was tired but happy. I took out my notebook and wrote down all the new words and expressions I had learned that day. The Big Apple. I'm beat. It's a schlep. What's the damage? Pizza joint. And many more. I also wrote down some of the pronunciation tips I had picked up by listening carefully to native speakers. Walter's southern y'all sounded very different from the deli worker's quick New York, "Whata ya want?" I was beginning to understand how diverse American English could be, even within the same city. Before going to bed, I sent a message to my parents in Mexico, telling them about my successful day of conversations. My mother replied right away. "We're so proud of you, Miguel. Your English will be perfect by the time you come home." The rest of my month in New York was wonderful, and I continued challenging myself to speak with locals whenever I could. By the end of my trip, talking to strangers didn't feel scary anymore. It felt like an opportunity to learn and connect. I even went back to the Met to take Rachel's tour of the Latin American art section, and I visited Tony's pizza shop twice more. The second time, Tony remembered my name. On my last day in New York, I went back to the coffee cart where I had my first conversation of that special day. The same man was there, and he recognized me. "Leaving us already, amigo?" he asked when I told him I was going back to Mexico the next day. "Come back soon. New York will miss you." I smiled, knowing that I would indeed come back someday. New York had given me more than just improved English skills. It had given me confidence, memories, and the knowledge that sometimes the best way to learn is to challenge yourself to step outside your comfort zone. Today, back in Mexico City, my English is much better, and I've even gotten a promotion at work because I can now communicate confidently with our American clients. Sometimes I use expressions I learned in New York, and my colleagues ask me where I picked them up. I tell them about my special day of conversations and how each person I met taught me something valuable. Learning a language isn't just about memorizing grammar rules and vocabulary. It's about connecting with people and understanding their world a little better. My name is Miguel, and this is my story about how one day of conversations in New York helped me become confident in speaking American English. Have you ever challenged yourself to step outside your comfort zone to learn something new? What happened when you did? Thank you for listening to my story.